Most people think of work as routine. You show up, you do your job, you go home. But sometimes, work puts you in places you were never meant to be. Late night shifts, empty buildings, moments where you think you are alone. These stories did not start with danger. They started with work. Several years back, I accepted a new position that felt like a real step forward in my career. It was not dramatic, just better than where I had been. Same field, same kind of responsibilities, a higher role at a more established company. I worked in marketing, mostly office-based work, nothing unusual on the surface. The pay was better. The company had a stronger reputation. From every practical angle, it made sense. I was confident it was the right move. My first day went smoothly. Meetings, introductions, paperwork, nothing out of the ordinary. Toward the end of the day, though, I decided to stay late. I wanted to get familiar with the systems, review internal documents, avoid feeling lost the next morning. Most of it could have been done at home, but I preferred staying at the office, where everything was already set up. By early evening, almost everyone had left. Around 6 o'clock, the building was quiet. I appeared to be the only person still there. I did not leave until much later, close to 9. By then, most of the overhead lights had turned off automatically, leaving only a few dim areas lit. The office felt hollow. No phones, no voices, just the faint hum of the building itself. I stayed focused on my work, focused enough that when I heard a noise somewhere across the office, I brushed it off without thinking. A chair moving, a door settling, that sort of thing. It did not register as important. A few minutes later, I heard it again. That was when it hit me. I should not be hearing anything at all. I was supposed to be alone. The office was a single-story building, medium-sized. Rows of cubicles, a few enclosed offices, and several conference rooms. I had my own office. The door was open. From where I sat, I could see a large portion of the cubicle area, but not everything. Whatever made the sound was out of view. I stopped typing and listened. Nothing happened for a while. After a minute or two, I convinced myself I was just letting the quiet get to me. Being alone in a dark office at night will do that. I went back to work, planning to wrap things up and leave. The uneasy feeling stayed, but no more sounds followed. When I finished, I decided to take a quick look around before heading out, just to be sure. I stepped out of my office. Immediately, I heard footsteps somewhere ahead of me. They were not close, but close enough to be unmistakable. My stomach tightened. I moved forward, trying to see around the corner of the cubicle rows. That was when I noticed movement to my right. Is someone there? A man in a dark coat turned toward me. He looked just as startled as I felt. He asked who I was, said he did not realize anyone else was still in the building. I asked him the same question. He told me he worked there, that he had stayed late to finish something. He gave me a name. It meant nothing to me. It was my first day. The office had around 30 employees. I had met most of them, but not all. I told him I was new and had stayed late as well. He said he was heading out. I told him I was leaving too. We walked toward the exit together. Neither of us said much. When we stepped outside into the parking lot behind the building, something immediately felt wrong. My car was the only one there. I asked him where his car was parked. He said he had walked. That made no sense. The office was not near any residential area, and it was late. Without another word, he turned and walked away quickly, heading in the opposite direction. I did not wait around. I got in my car and left. The next morning, the atmosphere at work was tense. Several internal files were missing. Security had been notified. Management started asking questions. I was questioned, because I had been the last confirmed employee in the building. I told them everything. That was when I learned the truth. The man I saw did not work there anymore. He had been terminated months earlier. Somehow, he had gained access to the building after hours. No one was sure how. What unsettled me the most was realizing he likely did not know I was there that night. He thought the office was empty. And if I had left just a little earlier, I never would have known he was inside at all. At the time, I did not understand what was happening. Looking back now, it makes much more sense. In the early 2020s, I took a job working overnight as a janitor at a public high school. That shift ended up being both my first night on the job and my last. Before starting, I attended a short training session at the school alongside another employee. I learned the routine, the schedule, where everything was stored. The position opened in the middle of the school year. The previous overnight worker had quit unexpectedly. I did not ask why. Working nights did not bother me. I expected to be alone most of the time, and that was fine. The job sounded simple. Clean the hallways, the bathrooms, the common areas. No classrooms. Those were locked and assigned to individual teachers. The building itself was a fairly typical high school. Slightly smaller than average, but still large enough to have long hallways, multiple wings, and plenty of space to keep me busy throughout the night. When my first shift started, another night custodian worked alongside me for a short while. Then he left. After that, I was completely on my own. Most of the lights in the school were turned off. A few remained on. Others were motion activated. They would shut off after a while, then suddenly turn back on when you walked near them. It created a strange rhythm of light and darkness as I moved through the building. About an hour into the shift, I heard footsteps echoing from a nearby hallway. At first, I assumed someone else was there, but that made no sense. The school was closed. No students, no staff, no events scheduled overnight. I called out, asking if anyone was there. No answer. I walked toward the area where I had heard the sound. I was not terrified at that point, more irritated than anything. But when I turned the corner, the hallway was empty. There were multiple places someone could have gone, but I saw no one. Eventually, I went back to work. The footsteps had not been close, and after a while, I started to wonder if I had imagined them. Later that night, I moved to a hallway at the far end of the school. As I approached, motion-activated lights turned on behind me, just like before. But when I reached that distant hallway, the lights there were already on. That should not have happened. I had not been there yet. The lights should have been off. I paused, then started working anyway. For about 10 minutes, everything was quiet. Then I heard footsteps again, this time from another hallway nearby. I stopped and listened, trying to pinpoint where the sound was coming from. It seemed farther away, but definitely real. I started walking toward it. That was when I heard a man laugh. It was low, unsettling, the kind of laugh that makes your body tense instantly. I froze in place. Then the footsteps changed direction and started moving closer. In that moment, I wanted nothing more than to leave the building. Whoever it was did not come down my hallway. Instead, the footsteps faded somewhere else. That was when I knew for sure someone else was inside the school with me. I considered calling the police. It was my first night. I did not want to overreact or cause a scene, so I chose a different approach. I followed the direction of the footsteps, shouting that I would call the police if they did not leave. I hoped the threat would scare them away. I had no idea why anyone would be there at that hour. For the next several minutes, I moved through random hallways, sometimes walking, sometimes jogging. A few times, I thought I heard footsteps again, always somewhere just out of sight, never close enough to see anyone. Eventually, I returned to the area where I had left my cleaning supplies. That was when I saw everything had been disturbed. My mop was knocked over, the cleaning cart was tipped onto its side. I knew it was not an accident. Whoever was in the school was doing this on purpose. I tried to continue working, but I felt on edge the entire time. After a while, I moved to another section of the building. I was standing in a more open area when, out of nowhere, I heard the man laugh again. This time, it came from behind me, maybe 20 feet away. I spun around and caught a brief glimpse of someone disappearing around a corner. That moment shook me more than anything else that night. For the rest of the shift, I stayed near the front entrance of the school. I did not hear anything else. When morning approached, I had already made up my mind. I was done. When another custodian arrived, I told him everything. The school was searched, but the man was gone. No sign of him anywhere. I never found out who he was, or why he had been there. I quit that job the same day, and I am still glad that I did. When I was about 17 years old, I got my first part-time job. It was as a cashier at a large retail store. This happened a long time ago, but I still remember that first day very clearly. On my first shift, I went through orientation and training. I sat in a small room with a screen and watched an instructional video. Then I spent another hour learning procedures and basic rules. After that, I was placed at a register, but I was not on my own. I was being trained directly while working. It was my very first job, so I was nervous. I did not fully trust myself yet. I kept worrying I would mess something up. The people there were kind, though. The manager was patient, and the woman assigned to train me was friendly and calm. By the time I officially started working the register, I felt more confident than I had earlier. The woman training me stayed right beside me the entire time. She watched every transaction, corrected me whenever I made a mistake. She even took her break at the same time I did. That night, her responsibility was to supervise me. Her name was Megan. She was still young, but a few years older than me. She mentioned she had been working there for over a year, and it showed. She was comfortable with the job. She knew exactly what she was doing. That made me feel at ease. I was slow at first, but I was doing fine overall. Megan mostly observed as I scanned items. She only stepped in when necessary. It was a quiet night, not very busy, which helped a lot. At one point, while I was helping a customer, I noticed Megan glancing over her shoulder. Not at me, but toward the front walkway of the store, past the checkout lanes. I did not think much of it. I stayed focused on my work. A few minutes later, she did it again. Eventually, I paused and looked in the same direction she had been watching. Everything looked normal. Customers walked by. Nothing seemed out of place. Then I heard Megan quietly say something under her breath. Oh no. I asked her what was wrong. She told me she was not talking to me and that I had not done anything wrong. So I went back to work, assuming it was nothing. Not long after that, I finished checking out a customer. There was no one else in my line. Suddenly, Megan reached over and turned off the light above the register, the signal that the lane was closed. She told me to follow her. I was confused. It was not time for a break. But I did not question her. She started walking quickly through the store. We passed into the clothing section, weaving through racks of clothes. I did not understand what was happening, but I followed her anyway. It was my first day, and I trusted that she knew what she was doing. She led me all the way to the back of the store, into an employee-only area I had never seen before. Since I worked as a cashier, I had never been back there. I assumed she was about to show me something related to the job. Instead, she walked straight through the back area, toward a set of exit doors. She pushed one open, revealing a quiet delivery alley behind the building. She walked outside. I started to follow her, but she stopped me. She said I did not need to come any farther. I stood in the doorway and watched. She jogged across the pavement, climbed over a short retaining wall, and disappeared into a grassy area behind some bushes. Within seconds, she was completely out of sight. I stood there for several minutes, confused, waiting for her to come back. She never did. Eventually, I went back inside, returned to the front of the store. I found the manager and told him Megan had left. When he asked why, I told him I did not know. He looked just as confused as I felt. Then he told me I could clock out and go home for the night. I did exactly that. I called my mother, waited to be picked up, and left. I continued working at that store afterward, but I never saw Megan again. A couple of weeks later, I asked someone what had happened to her. They told me no one really knew. She had simply stopped coming to work. The whole thing unsettled me. The way she suddenly rushed out, the fear she seemed to have, and how she never returned. I sometimes wondered if she believed someone was watching her or following her. I never got an answer. It was a strange and unsettling way to start my working life, and I still hope that wherever she is now, she is safe. A few years ago, I went through a situation at work that I still have trouble wrapping my head around. At the time, I was working in an office building for a mid-sized company. A new employee had just been hired. His name was Eric. Almost immediately, something about him felt off. He was overly familiar. He watched people a little too closely, and he did not seem to understand basic boundaries. During his first week, he asked me out. I declined. I was already seeing someone. Later, I learned he had asked out several other women in the office as well. Most of us brushed it off as awkward behavior, but for some reason, his attention stayed focused on me. Not long after that, he found me on multiple social media platforms. He began sending messages that made me uncomfortable. At first, I ignored them. I did not want to create problems at work. Even though we worked in different rooms, we still crossed paths during the day. One afternoon, he confronted me in person. He demanded to know why I was not responding to him online. It turned into an unpleasant scene. I was shaken afterward. Then things escalated. One evening, he showed up at my house, unannounced. I did not answer the door. He did not try to force his way inside, but the fact that he knew where I lived crossed a line I could not ignore. That was when I officially reported him. The company took action. He was terminated. Looking back, I was surprised he had been hired at all. Everyone else I worked with was professional and kind. After that incident, I transferred to a different office within the same company. New building, new environment, a fresh start. The new office was closer to my home. Overall, it was a much better place to work. On my first day there, everything went smoothly. My coworkers were welcoming, my workspace was comfortable. For the first time in a while, I felt like I could move on. Until I looked up. Standing across the room was Eric. For a moment, I thought I was imagining things. Then he noticed me and started walking in my direction. I had no idea how he even got into the building. We were on a high floor of a secured office tower. He reached me casually, as if nothing had ever happened. I asked him what he was doing there. He said he wanted to see me. I told him he was not supposed to be there, that I could call security. He accused me of getting him fired. I told him the truth. His actions were the reason he lost his job. I warned him to leave immediately and said that if I involved security, things would get much worse for him. His expression shifted from surprise to anger. After a moment, he muttered something and walked away. I watched him head toward the stairwell. I was relieved he was gone, but deeply unsettled. Somehow, he had found me again. The rest of the workday passed without incident. By the time I clocked out, I had almost convinced myself it was over. It was not. After work, I went down to the private parking garage, used only by our office. As I approached my car, I saw him standing near it. That was the moment fear really set in. I immediately turned around and headed back toward the building. When he started following me, I ran. I managed to get inside through a secured door. It locked behind me. I found a security officer and explained what was happening. By the time we returned to the garage, the man was gone. That night, he came to my house again. It was late when he began pounding on my door. I did not hesitate this time. I called the police immediately. His behavior escalated. He tried the door handle. He hit the door harder. He moved around the house. He struck a window and tried to access the back entrance. The police arrived just in time. When they got there, he was trying to break a rear window. He was arrested at the scene. I have not seen him since. Even now, it is hard to believe how quickly things spiraled. What started as an uncomfortable workplace interaction turned into something far more serious. I am just grateful it ended when it did. A long time ago, I took a job as a server at a small roadside restaurant. It was the kind of place that stayed open all day and all night. Because of that, new employees usually started on overnight shifts. I had worked nights before, so adjusting my schedule was not difficult. At that point in my life, it was the only job I could find. So I took it without hesitation. My very first overnight shift started out normally. The restaurant was quiet, but not completely empty. A few customers came in now and then. Because late nights were usually slow, I was the only waitress on duty. The restaurant sat in a rural area, far from most other businesses. There was a gas station nearby, and a large highway close enough that you could hear traffic in the distance. But otherwise, it felt isolated. I handled a few tables without any problems. I had waited tables before, which helped me stay calm and confident. Everything felt routine. Then, sometime close to 2 a.m, a man came in alone. He chose a table in the corner. He was a large man. He had a beard and a trucker-style cap. I approached him, introduced myself, and asked what he would like to drink, just like I did with every customer. He ordered coffee. Later, a meal. He was quiet but polite. Nothing about him stood out. He seemed like many other late-night customers I had served before. Nothing felt strange. Until it was time to pay. When I brought him the check, he apologized. He said he had forgotten his wallet in his vehicle. He looked embarrassed, genuinely sorry. I did not immediately think he was lying. He said he would go get it quickly. He even offered to leave his hat and shoes at the table, as proof that he would come back. Then he changed his mind. He suggested that I come with him instead, so I could see for myself that he was telling the truth. I told him it was fine, that I believed him, but he kept insisting. He said he wanted me to come with him. He promised a generous tip for the inconvenience. Before I had fully thought it through, he picked up the receipt and gently took my hand, guiding me toward the door. He was acting friendly, not aggressive, and I made the decision to follow him outside, so he could pay me directly at his vehicle. Outside, the lighting was very poor. Because of the restaurant's location, the parking lot was dim, especially at night. Most of the parking spaces were in front of the building, but the lot wrapped around the side and extended toward the back. At that hour, the lot was nearly empty. I noticed his truck was not parked out front. It was behind the building, where it was even darker. I followed him around the corner toward the back. I saw his pickup truck just ahead. As we reached it, everything changed. He grabbed my arm and began pulling me toward the vehicle. I asked him what he was doing. He told me to stay quiet. I tried to pull away, but he was much stronger than I was. He dragged me closer to the truck, moving quickly. I tried to shout. He covered my mouth. I could not break free. We struggled as he pulled me closer and closer. He reached the door. He opened it. Then I heard movement behind us. The back door of the restaurant opened. I saw our cook step outside. I do not know if he heard me or if it was pure chance, but when he saw what was happening, he started yelling and ran toward us. That interruption changed everything. The man released me. He jumped into his truck and drove away without hesitation. The cook came over right away. He asked if I was okay. I was shaken, but physically unharmed. He called the police immediately. Unfortunately, we were unable to get his license plate. No identifying information beyond a basic description. He also left without paying for his meal. I do not know if he was ever caught. I still hope that he was. Subscribe for more real horror stories. Like the video if you felt this fear too.